8:39 exactly, news and views right here on Salam Media. We are going to be talking with Gideon Chitanga. He is research associate at the African Center for the Study of the United States at Wits University. Now, a new long-term scenario analysis confirms that China will overtake the United States as the most powerful country in the world by mid-century, which means by about 2050. um, 2050. The West, comprising the US and the European Union, can't constrain China's momentum towards great power status. So, where does it leave us as Africa, South Africa, and Africa as a whole? Can we afford to pick a side in a contest that will hurt the continent's future? Gideon Chitanga, very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very good indeed. Thank you so very much for your time. I do look forward to the chat this morning.
Thank you.
Would you like to respond to my opening statement, please? It's really
Yes,
about us as Africa. Um, where does it leave us? Whom do we back? Or do we try and be friendly to both the West and China? Is that a possibility?
yes. I think that the most important thing is to understand that the development of China is not in any way a threat to the West, neither to the US or to the European Union. And the development of China for Africa, it's evidently a great opportunity because it has shifted the singular exclusive reliance for African development needs on the US and the European Union, and it has broken the relations that were exclusively rooted in colonial domination, particularly with respect to the historical relations between Europe and Africa. And these relations are sort of influenced or shaped in much of the colonial relationships and the political and economic partnerships which developed the post-colonialism. So in my view, the development of China, the evolution into a great power is such a great opportunity for Africa. But it is also important for shifting global structural relations. China has advocated for a more equal participation in the international system, in global institutions, in a global economic system that is fairer, respects the interests of the other countries, including developing countries in Africa and South Africa. So I foresee that what has to shift is the attitude of the West, of the global North, to understand that the development of China in particular, but any other country in general, does not come with as a potential existential threat that presents zero-sum conundrums to the existence of either the West, the global North, or Western countries, particularly the EU and the United States. And by the way, this idea that the development of China is a threat or is a challenge to what is called the liberal order, it is an ideological posture that has been sustained by a section of American hawkish political elites and some in the West, but it increasingly proven to be a fallacy because in the history of the world, I think that Chinese modernization is one of the most peaceful modernization in the sense that it did not have to depend on colonial plunder or plundering resources from other countries. So at this moment, I think the focus should be, and for policymakers and political thinkers, the focus should be on fostering a more sustainable, equitable global order that can protect human security and continue to promote and enhance global economic participation. For us in Africa, it is very important to continue to explore advantages of both civilizations. In the past 2 decades, Africa has developed great relations with China, and those relations, I think, have been by far more impactful, more beneficial in terms of developing infrastructure that is quite evident and allowing Africans to exercise some level of leverage and autonomy and independence in executing these projects. If you think of the West, there has been some partnerships, but these partnerships have always come with political control and some level of tutelage on Africans, and Africans resent and reject that. So Africans are looking at a world platform that promotes, enhances development opportunities. African countries need to increase quite quickly to enhance economic growth, increase GDP, also broaden economic participation, develop infrastructure, and shift the focus at national and continental level into more productive economic and political relations.
The reason we're having this discussion today, Gideon, is the study by the African Futures and Innovation team at the Institute for Security Studies have assessed the likely future distribution of power worldwide. They've come up with 4 scenarios, which I'm sure you're aware of. Can we just unpack them as briefly as possible, because they are very key to this discussion? They talk about a sustainable world, a divided world, which is the current trajectory, a world at war, as we're seeing in Russia and the Ukraine, and a growth world. Where do we sit in all of this? How do we make sense of it? And how does Africa move forward, making the right choices?
I think the 4 key projections that are mapped in the ISS report are very important. So they range from extreme skepticism, where the current threats that we are already witnessing, war in the West, Ukraine versus Russia, might degenerate into a global conflict.
Sure.
But more importantly, they are also informed by what positions are likely to be taken by China as opposed to Europe and the United States. And for me, the key short point from all the steps is that there are 2 major alternatives. A more peaceful world that is more focused on cooperation in addressing global threats and creates opportunity for broader, equitable partnerships that recognizes that the development of China is not a threat. And for Africa, that means that Africa and South Africa should be able to navigate the complexities of an emerging multilateral global order, but also taking advantage of opportunities to enhance and maximize its economic interests, but respecting a global system where all the countries can effectively participate and cooperate. The other way, which the report speaks of, which presents serious threats, it is more polarization between China and on one side, the United States and Europe on the other side. And in a more general way, if this polarization is escalated, potentially we might eventually end up with a very terrible global outlook, possibly another world war that is more destructive, or we might be just hanged in the polarized rivalry between the major powers. And Africa would be put in a position where either the continent has to choose between China and on one side and Europe and the United States on the other side. And I think that
okay. Carry on.
Yes, I think that we are a bit in this kind of a context. Although we are not in an open world conflict, we are a bit in this kind of conflict where the West tries to exercise its leverage to influence Africa to take certain position that are so divisive. In a sense, the argument that the multilateral positions that are taken by African countries should be informed by a sense of cooperating with the West as opposed and against China. And African countries are insisting on their independence, on their sovereignty, on their autonomy in exercising their choice, but also enhancing their interests, whether they decide to engage more comprehensively with China. But in a very practical sense, I see an Africa that is willing to navigate the polarization, that is willing to continue to call for a more cooperative global order. And what is more important for me, which does not come out very forcefully in the report, I think that the West should and needs to shift its attitude towards the world. You see that the center of contention, which is what we call the liberal democratic order or the general political system in the West, is facing a lot of problems. Today we are talking about elections in the US and threat
The
violence.
midterms, yes, the midterms.
Yes, the midterms, threats of violence. Some sections of the US society believing that the elections are fraudulent, could be stolen. You hear about the physical attacks on some key families or key elites. This tells you that liberal democracy is not the only political system that is sustainable, effective, as we are made to believe. It has serious problems. So the West should at least focus on sustaining its liberal democratic order, but also respect and seek to understand other political systems as a way of reaching out and connecting with the global community. That will also help in finding strategic ways of addressing problems without causing violent conflict at a global level, by respecting other societies and taking advantage of a mutually developmental cooperation that can give every other part of society an opportunity to grow.
My final question, and a short, sharp answer if you don't mind. What do you believe? You alluded to a world war. What do you believe could push us into a world war in this century, in the next few years?
You know, my reading of the past world wars, the first and the second, is that they were very important issues where societies differed or had different ways of addressing them. Then these issues escalated, and then you just have a certain emotional incident that happens, and it tilts all these conflict issues into causal factors that cause a global conflict. So in bringing that, I'm saying we are in a very delicate period. Very slight mistakes might trigger some nuclear reaction that can then escalate into counter reactions from the different conflict parties. So it might be Ukraine, it could be North Korea, it could be any other area that at the moment is in a very delicate position. What is key and very important and maybe different for our contemporary situation is that there are key multilateral platforms like the UN and others, and there are some very sensible voices which continue to say diplomacy is very important. So I think that the world leaders must continue to invest their ideas in multilateral platforms to solve the different contradictions that we are witnessing at a global level. And countries like African countries which have called for diplomacy, they should continue to forcefully push for diplomacy in addressing conflicts and take these discourses to the denuclearization, the lowering the amount and levels of the potential of the nuclear threat, addressing other important disasters, the potential global disasters like climate change, ensuring that other issues like governance in Africa, which is highlighted in the same report that we are talking about. It has been is There is much attention from the African Union, the regional organizations, to continue to work on improving governance in the member states of the AU and the SADC, and obviously addressing conflicts. For example, the conflict in Ethiopia and conflicts in other parts of the continent, including the threat of terrorism in Mozambique and in parts of West Africa. So these are urgent needs, but the commitment of African countries to diplomacy, I think, is quite an important difference. Just the need to robustly push the diplomacy, whether it's in the relations of Africa and China, or whether it's Africa engaging the West.
Okay, Gideon Chitanga, that's where we have to leave it. Research Associate at the African Center for the Study of the United States at Wits University. That brings us to 8:55 exactly. Standing by to talk with us is Narend Ganesh. He's a South African activist. We are going to be looking at the killings in the Claremont community and a whole host of other things as far as KZN is concerned. Please stay with us.